Okay, welcome back to another episode of the Shed Geek Podcast. Long anticipated and very, very appreciative interview today on the podcast. No stranger to the shed industry, but Phil, for those that don't know you, maybe introduce yourself, your company, and a little bit about what you do, sir.
Oh, wow. Phil Falls, RTO National. I'm the founder and CEO. What do I do? I have the great fortune of leading a really good group of people. That's probably the biggest thing that I do.
I know this to be true because I've asked you this question before in private.
Okay. Uh-oh.
And I've said, Phil, what's it look like? Like, what's the 20 years in, I think.
20 years in October.
You've seen a lot in the shed industry. You've seen managed a successful RTO company. And I said, what do you look back on to reflect? What are the pieces of advice that you give to people when no one's around, when no one's looking, the recipes to success? And I'm a better listener than you think. I don't always just talk. You said it's about the people. Whether you remember that or not, you told me it's about the people. It's really about those that you manage, those you supervise, those you work with, you start to care for. And I really took that to heart. And I've probably even mentioned it a couple times. So I know that to be true, that for you, team, culture, those are big things. So tell me how RTO National got its start. I'm trying to think of what an audience member would ask you, and I'm trying to live vicariously through the audience. Right. What would they ask Phil 20 years ago? What? I
mean, so I had a few friends. I was living in Atlanta with my wife. We're trying to start a family, and I think Richard Mashburn may have told some of the story on one of the podcasts, and did a great job of it. Richard's a fantastic, great guy and fantastic storyteller, and better than I am at that. In Atlanta, I had some friends doing rent to own, building their sheds, selling their sheds, again, 20 plus years ago. I was working in Atlanta in the private equity group, but wanted to run my own business. Was arrogant enough to thought I was able to do that, and naive enough to think I should do that. Had have fantastic wife. We just celebrated our 25th anniversary and been together for 27 years.
Congratulations.
She supported me, and her family's here in Greenville, South Carolina. My father had passed away, and I said, I really want to try something. I've had some friends approach me about running their business, which was in the shed manufacturing and rent to own, a small business in North Georgia, and really didn't want to go to work for anyone. They were not in South Carolina, so I felt comfortable with kind of learning a little bit about it from them, but then not competing. So came to Greenville. My wife agreed and said, okay. And she was a school teacher at the time, so we had health insurance, which was a big deal, and had a little bit of income coming in. But we'd saved a lot of money every time to do this, and started back in 2003.
So way different in 2003 than 2023. What's some of the more noticeable differences from when you began to where it is now? By the way, 27 years is exactly how long me and my wife have been together.
That's great.
So we've got 23 years of marriage, but we have been together since March of 96. So is when we started dating. So that's just clever.
So, and I'll say this, and I think you would probably say the same. I cannot, I don't know if my wife will listen to this or not. She's been in this for 20 years now. I'm extremely fortunate to be married to the woman I'm married with, because the patience that it takes to be married to someone that starts their own business. I have 2 great kids. The patience for the kids, the understanding, especially at a young age. When you're doing your own show or your own company, the commitment that you've got to make, especially if you're young and you don't really understand the need for the balance, requires an awful lot of give and just a little bit of take from the family. They're giving a lot more than they're taking. And I've just been greatly fortunate to have a family that's done that. And that's made it a lot easier for me, not always for them. So that I'm extremely, and again, celebrating our 25th anniversary, I'll probably do a little quick shout out and say, thank you, honey, for the patience and for sticking by me.
Absolutely.
So you have that. And then, in terms of the people, it's not something that I've always focused on. I think I've got the good fortune of just my personality, I enjoy celebrating successes, whether they're with us as a company, whether they're our folks outside. I've always enjoyed celebrating successes of the people around me. It's fun. I tend to not think too much about the failures if it's a competitor or if it's someone that we're not interacting with well. I tend to have a good ability to put that behind me. So from the people side, that's really important. From the industry, it's so much more competitive than it was in the shed space. Now, what I'll say about that is the quality is, I was talking to someone recently about this, the quality is for the consumer. It's so much better than what it was 20 years ago. The quality of the buildings being made, the speed of delivery, until prices have run up, starting with COVID. Now they're coming back down, but when prices run, before that, the value for what you're getting was much greater than value, in my opinion, for what you received 20 years ago. Just the competition drove quality in terms of product. I think it also drove flexibility for the customer. So I think that competition has been good for the customer. And so far from an industry, I don't believe it's been so competitive because of the growth of the industry that it's caused a shakeout yet. Now we'll see what's going to come, but so far the industry's grown a lot. It's gotten more competitive, meaning people had to up their game, but it wasn't to a degree that you couldn't keep up. That's sort of what I've seen.
Yeah. Obviously so many companies pride themselves on building a quality shed. But I think that maybe the next wave, if you will, of conversation to exist in there is maybe the quality of customer service, delivery and care setup, service after the sale. One of my favorite things that I heard on the podcast was Leon Martin said, anything you do after the sale is service.
I agree. Yeah, 100%.
It just dawned on me, like, wait a minute, me, like so many other people have been doing what you can do to get to the sale, but you really go to a new caliber of sales. If we're talking sales, you really go to a new caliber of a sales provider whenever you kind of get that ebb and flow goes past the sale. You're not just stopping with your service and the benefits and all that you do because you've closed.
Right.
There's a lot of closing that happens even afterwards through the service. So I think maybe the next wave over the next 5-10 years or something will be discussion about service, discussion about what's the word I'm looking for? Programs,
warranty.
Right. Yeah, but really.
Yep.
It's kind of like whenever people say, you keep your secrets to yourself in the shed industry. There's not really a whole lot of secrets. It's really about what you do internally. And I think that's probably, I think where I'm trying to go is that's the next conversation. That's the next wave is, there are companies that are looking to grow. They're doing 500 sheds a year, but then there's companies that are doing 5,500 sheds a year. And you say, what's the difference?
Right.
It's all decisions.
It's so. To your point about the secrets, if you do have a secret, once you start executing in the market, it's going to be out there pretty quick, right?
Yeah.
So unless it's something that is going to take a long time for someone to react to and catch up with you, which is pretty hard to find and do.
First mover's advantage is short-lived.
It's short-lived. Best case, a year.
Yeah.
Maybe 18 months if it's technology related, but now with some of the technology that's happening, that's always been a big advantage of ours, but we've even watched that shrink. That advantage. We're trying to do some things And our technology advantages are usually either internally to keep us efficient and provide better service, have more data, do those things, which we're really spending a lot of time on trying to push that back out to our dealer base to let them have a competitive advantage. That's the big move for us. So that's really important from a technology. But outside of that, there's not a lot of secrets that you're going to have. Most of it comes back down to execution. It's execution, and a lot of that comes back down to culture. And I don't mean execution in just block and tackle. It's execution around a culture of service. So we've always tried to do that. Right now, we're kind of undergoing, we've had sort of a lot of changes over the last 12 months in our senior leadership level but we will be and are already executing on moving to the next level of service. I feel like for an organization like us, we have the capabilities to do it. So let's take that service level up, both to the dealer and the customers, and let's help the dealers that want to do it. Let's begin to put those in place. So I'm in complete agreement with you. If you think about, I just happened to think about this when we were talking. I was in a Toyota dealership service department the other day, my daughter's car. If you go back 20 years, and I would have pulled into that Toyota dealership, the experience then versus the experience now, it's night and day. TVs, coffee, air conditioning if you want to wait. They're texting. They're giving me quotes. They're keeping me up to date. I mean, there's so much they're doing versus the way it used to be. We have the technology to do a fair amount of that, almost all of that today, but then turning that toward the dealer so the dealer can use that to service the customer is a lot of the technology that we're doing. So example, can you text with the customer instead of having to call them before you go out for delivery? Our system lets you do that. That doesn't mean the driver texts off their phone, because if you're the owner or you're the manager or supervisor, you would like to have a little more control of that interaction. The person texting me from Toyota to say my daughter's car needs a repair isn't doing it from his private phone. He's doing it through their system. Our system does that. So those are the things we've been working on to really
communication.
Yes. In the way the customer wants it.
Right.
It's not communicate how you want it. It's to communicate how the customer wants it.
I feel like we need to take that soundbite and just make it 45 seconds long. It's not the way you want it. They're consumers. They're customers. It's 100%. What they want, and we're having to. They're your boss when you have no boss. That's right. It's trying to find a solution for them, but communication. I think modern day technology, if I can harp on it, if I can be like the old grandpa that's screaming, "Get off my lawn," and I don't like technology kind of things, it would be. It's done some really amazing things for us, but it has certainly made us less communicative, with more opportunities in which to communicate with. I
completely agree. That comes back down to, so you have a technology that'll do it.
Yeah.
It backs up to, though, what's the culture and what's the execution around that.
Yes.
So I don't need to text you 50 times. I don't need to text you when I'm 5 minutes away. If you text me back that you can't come, hey, sorry, I forgot. I'm not here at home. I need to reschedule. Okay. Reply and let them know that.
Yeah.
And don't go do the delivery and then charge them the $200.
Yeah.
The point being is the technology only goes so far, and you can automate. We over-automate sometimes as an organization. We are now stepping back and going, okay, where do we pull back that automation and re-inject the person into it, and then that service mentality. I think right now that's the number one push in our organization for this part of 23 and moving through 24 is how do we get back? I shouldn't even say get back. We've grown, and now that we have so many tools, how do we begin to narrow that focus and raise our personal service levels?
A company your size that's grown to have good success through the decisions you've made, you are the first to set a lot of the platforms whenever you're leading from the front. You're pulling that industry forward with new ideas, with new opportunities, whether it be technology. I mean, there's a lot of first that's easy to to check off on the list there that RTO National's come out with. I see you guys out there. Is a push for service the next first of the industry, or is there other things that we don't see coming that you guys project? I'm sure you're going to have a lot of your systems in place. What do you see coming? What are the first created by RTO National that we might see in the future for the shed industry as it's changing, as it's evolving?
That's a really good question.
That's why I pay myself
That's
big
right.
money.
That's right. That's why you make the big bucks. That is a really good question about what's the next first. So there are some dealers. So let's talk about dealers. There's some services for dealers in regards to their ability to broaden dealers or dealer owners to broaden their participation. So you have manufacturers, let's just talk shed, manufacturers, dealers, finance companies, finance company being lease, purchase, finance, whatever. And there's a constant movement of independence or an aggregation of all three under one umbrella or two. And one of the things that I rarely give advice, I never give advice unless it's asked, and then I try to be very attuned to the advice I'm giving. Is it pertinent for the conversation or the environment that in which I'm talking? One of the things is often I'm a dealer and I'm mad at my manufacturers and I want to get into manufacturing. And I always warn, it's a whole lot harder than you think. It's going to suck up a lot of time. That doesn't, and I've had some conversations with folks say, hey, but if you want to do it and you're passionate about it and you think it's the best thing for your business, of course, you follow that. But just beware, everything's harder than you think it is. So sometimes you may be better to form a joint partnership. And that means it's got to have equal footing for both sides, right? We've seen a little bit of that in the manufacturing retail environment, just a little bit right now, where there's guaranteed purchases. You know, I try to tell people, look at it from the other side. Put yourself in their shoes. If you're ordering all these products and I'm ramping up production, I need some guarantees. Any other industry would require that. On the rental side or the finance side, it's forming those partnerships, and that has been spotty at best. So how do you form partnerships where you're sharing some risk and you're sharing some reward for the folks that want it? And again, there has to be a lot of trust. There has to be a lot of communication up front. You have to have a long-term vision. You've been married, y'all been together for 27 years? Like, that's a commitment.
Absolutely.
Like, and there are ugly times in that when you're upset and mad and you feel like I said something and they said, no, that's not what you said. Like, you have to be able to work through that and step back and be patient. It's the same way in those partnerships. So finding those folks that you trust and going, okay, how do we do this where it's a long-term relationship that's a win for both parties? I think that's part of the next evolution, because I think there's going to be consolidation. I know it's already been happening. Yep. I think it's going to slow for a little while, and then it might pick back up a couple of years from now, 12, 18, 24 months from now, because we're probably likelihood as we're walking toward a recession. Rates are going back up. Cost of funding is going way up. Labor is going up. So you have rising interest and you have rising inflation, both labor and products. So, you know, how all this plays out could get messy for a little while. I think shed dealers are seeing a little struggle right now. We're seeing inventories build back on the lots. We're seeing a return in our numbers, both in collections as well as just volumes and retail prices. Retail prices are not back to 18, 19 yet, but they're down 25% in the last 12 months. So we've seen price per square foot, adjusting for size, pricing's down 22, I think we ran the numbers, it was 21.5%, call it 20%. So pricing's starting to drop, volumes are slowing down. And so trying to reevaluate how does this industry look out over the next few years, probably some consolidation. Consolidation lets you increase your service level. And for a lot of people, they find that confusing, and they're thinking, well, wait a minute, if I'm a small operator and I have 3 lots, I should be like the greatest service ever. Well, you can be, but if you get large enough, you have the structure and you have the capital, you can begin to put the processes, the systems, and the people in place to make sure you've got great systems. And I think that's one of the things that consolidation may force or may begin to show is just a much higher level of service as some of these entities get bigger. I'm not really seeing it yet in terms of the level we think is capable and we can help some of our dealers get to, but we got a little work to do this year to get there ourselves.
Is your current sales and inventory management system complicated and frustrating? Are you tired of juggling multiple systems to keep track of your business? Those challenges are a thing of the past with a dealer management system powered by RTO National. With the DMS, you can easily process any type of sale with just a few clicks. Leave messy paperwork in the past and welcome in streamlined processes. The intuitive e-commerce links allows customers to browse and shop your inventory anytime, anywhere. Track transportation, payments, and contracts efficiently using our unparalleled service request management and transportation tracking tools. Detailed reporting within the system allows you to track every sale and payment, helping you make data-backed decisions to grow your business. Revolutionize your current workflow with the dealer management system. Explore the user-friendly interface and experience the DMS firsthand by scanning the QR code or emailing us at contactus@rtonational.com to request a demo.
Well, collaboration's key. I mean, it's terribly important as you're seeing not just new technologies emerge into the industry, but just new products, but new people entering the space. The shed space itself is becoming more mature. I still think that we're trending upward and that's from just the travels. I don't have hard data to suggest anything different, but just through the travels, it seems like numbers are trending upwards. They're, like you said, they're slowing down from those big COVID ebbs that we had.
Jen, that's the key. You've got to take 2021 out of the picture.
Yeah.
Right size back to 18, 19. Yeah. To your point, long term, I think the industry has a huge amount of opportunity. Still a tremendous amount of opportunity. We're across the country, so we're 40 some odd states, 48 states, whatever. We're in lease, rent to own. We're in 46 states or something. I should know those numbers. I can tell there's some people that are going to listen to this in our office that are going, how could he not quote the exact number?
I'm going to say above 40, you get a pass.
Yeah, well, I think we get a pass. We're pretty well covered. We're pretty well covered. So we've got good visibility, I should say, across the country. And so you see some markets up and down. I feel like we're seeing a slowing down right now, but you're seeing a slowing back to your 18, 19 trends.
Yeah.
But long term, overall, there's absolutely plenty of opportunity, but it is more competitive. You got to be on you're going to have to be on your A game.
All the conversation right now is about focus on sales, how to increase sales, what makes sales work. Obviously, labor is not as much of a struggle because inventory is not flying off the shelf. When sales were plentiful, no one needed help selling more. Money was readily available. So even with an increase in components, it didn't matter. They still 16-week lead times.
Yep.
And that's, just to build something new, and people were still paying for it. So it was, I definitely think that's the thing right now. I think it's going to move towards a marketing and sales vision for each company because they're trying to project how are we going to see, and that's what we were seeing in 18-19 though. It's like you said, we're just taking out the bubble.
That's exactly
We're going back, and
yes,
it's still increasing. It's just increasing at a much slower rate that is healthy.
I agree.
But painful because it's constantly stretching you to do better and to be better.
What we're hearing is, so a good example is something that we were just talking about. I think yesterday I was speaking with one of our sales folks about it. He said, I think we're going to see a fair amount of turnover in sales staff again. We need to get ready for training. And I said, really, why? And he goes, Phil, a lot of the people that have come into the industry on the sales side, so, they're working at the dealer, they're one person at a lot, maybe two, whatever. He said, they came in 2021.
It's going to be like this all the time.
I'm already watching it. They are not making the money they did in 21, or they're going to have to work a lot harder for it. and they're not willing to do it because in their mind, baseline is 2021, not 1819. So what we're getting is that feedback to go, if that happens internally, we need to start getting ready and staffing up, working with our marketing team to be able to have a higher training level because we're going to see that turnover. That makes it harder. You know, a lot of the folks that are in, if you're a manufacturer, I've always said this, a manufacturing mentality is very different than a retail mentality, right? And so when you have a manufacturer that owns retailers and is running retail, it can be a really difficult, or if they're in transportation, which is we all now know, and I've said this for years because I lived it, transportation can be the great advantage as well as a tremendous disadvantage to an integrated organization. The sales staff, depending on the organization, is often looked at as these folks out on these lots that either need to kind of run their own show and figure it out, and they need to do everything on the lot, be a manager, cleaner, scheduler, sales, do all that, or maybe even order their own inventory. And they're not really, and that's one of the problems of being integrated, is the culture on that sales organization has to be very different. You have to, everybody needs motivation.
Yeah.
But if you work in a really sales-oriented organization, they are masters at motivating that sales staff, keeping them pumped up for that next sale, and then taking things off of them that aren't sales-oriented.
I would say in general, everything, like I kind of put everything in my mind under an umbrella. When you're fully vertically integrated and you're trying to accomplish everything from sales to warranty repairs and delivery, and it just depends on the size of your company. But I've said it before and I'll say it again. You're starting kind of like 4 different companies, especially because you could make a living just hauling sheds or selling sheds or building sheds or, providing products and services to sheds. But whenever you try to do everything together now, it can be done, and there's some companies that do it well, but now are you going to be able to scale that full integration up? Because it all starts with your decisions. Then things like capital start to come into the conversation. I want to do my own rent-own. Right. Next time, instead of saying I want to do my own rent-own, say I want to start a brand new company, and I would like for that brand new company to be a rent-own company. And now think about the steps you had to take when you started your company, because that's exactly what it's going to take. It's not as simple as I want to start a new rent-own company. And if so, what scares me is how dedicated are you to learning that contract? Are you a rent-to-own provider right now that doesn't understand your own contract?
Well,
that scares me.
Yeah.
If you're going out and teaching people, and I want to get to this part of the conversation. Go ahead. I want your response, but I want to get to this. But I think a lot of that, and I'm so curious your thoughts on this, is because of the fragmentation of the industry. How does that pan out when you do have consignment locations that are signing on and we just need to put some sheds out and get some sold maybe, and the dealers get a quick 10% versus maybe a wholesale model, or someone who's got, some skin in the game. Maybe they've got, purchased $200,000 worth of inventory versus purchase lot rent. Not saying that both can't work, not suggesting one's better than the other. I'm curious about the conversation behind that, because I think that and how they sell a rent-to-own contract, that does start to matter. And not just a rent-to-own contract, how they sell in general. What benefits the industry is whenever we raise the weakest link up a little bit higher. It always makes for a stronger industry. So I never see it as if someone doesn't know and you help them that it hurts you. I always see it as it helps us as a whole. We just go make a bigger pie. There's more profit for everybody. So I'm curious your thoughts on a lot of that, and that was probably a lot to throw at you. Sorry.
So I'm going to, I'll sit back and say parse that.
Take parts of it, yeah.
Y'all take parts of that one and figure that one out. In regards to the manufacturer, so there's different core competencies in all those. So far, our industry has gotten away on the finance, and when I say finance, predominantly we're lease purchase, so rent-to-own, lease purchase. The regulatory environment has not looked at in much of a way the shed rent-to-own companies. State regulated. There's been a few cases that were very quiet, but it hasn't really been approached. So there are a lot of folks doing some things that I won't say it's going to get them a lot. It's going to cost them a lot of money at the end of the day. And it's going to be a giant distraction. Until that happens, most people will look at the yields they think they can generate and focus on it. And also, if you're growing a finance portfolio, your growth hides your losses. So I've listened to people talk about retrieval rates, and just, again, I'm a finance person. I'm pretty good with my numbers, and I hear them say it, and then I ask how they calculate it, and I don't say anything. That's their business, but I know that's not a real retrieval rate. Just because you did 10 this month and retrieved 1, you don't have a 10% retrieval rate. You got to do some math, and you got to be able to track some things over the long course of time. You do a 60-month contracts, you do 1,000 in a month. If you really want to know your retrieval rate, you got to wait 60 months to figure out how all 1,000 of those did, right? So there's some differences. So there's some people that have been in this for a while that have had a lot of growth that has covered up, in my opinion, what their losses are. And once that flattens or drops is when that comes home to roost. In regards to manufacturers, I have a lot of empathy, sympathy, whatever you want to call it, for manufacturers. Everyone says, gosh, building a shed, how hard can it be? I built sheds. There are some great shed builders in our industry. Let me rephrase. There's some great builders in our industry. They just happen to be building sheds. I used to say, when I would talk to manufacturers or talk to someone that was complaining about a building and their manufacturer, and say, look, they can't cover it up with insulation and sheetrock, that hole.
Right.
And so that's why I say the quality has gone up so much.
Your work's on display always.
Man. I'm so impressed. And then managing production, managing stocking levels. That's a whole different core competency than running retail lots. Trying to do all three effectively under one umbrella is not easy, because it takes 3 core competencies that often in those organizations, you have a risk management and service and finance. You have an aggressive sales culture. Even if you're great at service, you still have a very aggressive sales culture in a retail sales environment. And then in manufacturing, that's a whole nother ball game of how do you buy and manage and control your capital effectively. It's hard to do all of them. And just because you're frustrated about one doesn't mean you should just go off and do it. And I'm not saying that people do. It's often better if you find the right partner to partner. And now what that partnership looks like could take a lot of different. That's one of the things that we're focusing on over the next year, is how do we deepen partnerships and begin to figure out how do we work the best.
I love it. I can tell culture is a big thing, but I just watch from a distance, and I can even see the social presence that has increased with dealer visits that's coming across my feed. I'm seeing all of your guys out there. I'm seeing David out there. I'm seeing Mike, Dennis. Definitely. Yep. I just see these different places they're stopping at, and dealer shout outs, and really building that company culture into the dealer. And what you guys are trying to portray, it's getting across to the end user.
100%. First of all, we're so fortunate. Dennis Fisher, Mike Small, Teddy down in Florida, Jesse. We call them RSMs. We had our RSM meeting. We do it usually 2 times a year. We bring them in and we have a big meeting. And we have a lot of new people on our leadership team. We're really prepping for the next 5 to 10 years of growth, and so we've expanded and had some transition on our leadership team. We've always had great people, but it's exciting to get some new people with new vision. They're having to learn our core culture, but they all fit in and go to the next level. And I told them before we had the meeting, I said, y'all are going to love our salespeople. You're going to love the people out in the field. And they're like, yeah, salespeople. Yeah, right. And I said, no, I'm telling you, you're going to really like them. These are knowledgeable, mature. I don't like to use the word that they're all about the company, or the words like they're focused on the end user, but they also have they have what is in the best for RTO National also. It's not a one-sided playing field. And what was great is just do 3 days of meetings and watch our sales staff who are out and know our dealers the best, educate a lot of this new leadership team, and admit our faults, admit the faults of the dealers, take ownership, offer to help in some areas we need to prove that aren't really sales-oriented tasks, but some things around inventory and things that we need to work on and kind of clean up, and roll up their sleeves. And I tell you, that gains so much respect from operation-type people, finance-type people, that now what I knew before that meeting and what now our leadership team, a lot of them that have joined in the last 12 months know, if one of our outside salespeople come to them with an issue, they have tremendous credibility. So there's not a culture battle. Well, you're always trying to just get what the dealer tells you. You're just always trying to get a freebie we don't have that. And that is so unique. And it takes a special type of outside salesperson, and it takes a special type of leadership from an operations standpoint to have that trust. That's the culture. That's what that is right there what's so important.
Well, I've said kind of things about him before, so I won't go too overboard, but I worked with Dennis early on. I stop at places now that Dennis still goes to, and sometimes I run into him. Even it's so rare, but it's funny how you'll be at the same place, getting an interview or whatever. And I always said he was really patient, really took his time to talk with me about any concerns I had, things that I brought to the table, and he's always very knowledgeable. We used to talk quite a bit on the phone, and we still talk now.
So Dennis, first of all, Dennis is a great person. So just core personality. He's a good person. He has a lot more experience than most people realize. In terms of
for sure.
And it comes back to, for a lot of what we're trying to do, which is, we're out there working to gain finance contracts and work with dealers, but we've always said, hey, we want that dealer to be successful so that we get more contracts. They're more successful. We get more contracts. We build that partnership. And so our salespeople tend to be more mature, we think, and have the ability to truly add value, not because they just come out of the shed industry. They may come out of other industries that are more mature. Dennis is a fantastic example of that. Mike Small. I mean, I need to be careful of calling people out because they're all just, I'm extremely fortunate.
Hello, Shed Builder. Midco is celebrating its 15th year serving you, the Shed Builder, and we couldn't be more excited about serving you in 2023. What started as an opportunity to serve you with top quality steel and fiberglass doors has developed into an opportunity to serve you with many products. Midco offers pre-hung, slab, and overhead garage and roll-up doors, vinyl windows, aluminum shed and playhouse windows, several hardware items such as anchors, coil nails, T-hinges, drip edge, C-bar, hurricane straps, T-handles, barrel bolts, D-handles, and louvered vents, and more. Plus, they have an accessory line of products like board and batten molded shutters, flower boxes, diamond plate ramps, and Mr. Cool mini splits. Thank you, Shed Builder, for 15 years of serving your shed brand. We look forward to 15 more. To receive information on these products and more, call 270-247-7447 or visit midcoproducts.com. Midco Building Products, trusted American craftsmanship. I debated in my head over telling this story, and I'll stay very topical because this is one that I can tell. People say, hey, why are you fluffing RTO National? Hey, I'm just telling it like it is. This is a real experience that I had whenever I learned what level you guys are playing at, but really how you handle things, how you handle business. I had an opportunity to sell a sponsorship spot. It's a main sponsorship spot. And it didn't go through. And in the conversation, I was talking with Richard, and Richard said, hey, we'd probably be interested in having a conversation about that there. And I said, oh no, I'm not sure if I can do that. It kind of left me vulnerable. And he said, hey, if it's going to cost you any unease at all, talk to us whenever it won't. There was no pressure. There was no judgment. And it was really unfair on my part not to offer. And he never held that against me. He said, we're not about creating strife or conflict or difficulty, not just with you, but any potential competitors or anything like that. The industry wins whenever we all win. It was a moment where you got to eat a little crow, and I had to. I was like, wow, these guys are top notch. And I've come across, and I'll leave some of the other top notch guys nameless just because I'm gloating on you guys at the moment. I don't want to bring that in. They'll have their own moment, if you will, but. Yeah, I appreciated that ever since then. And I mentioned that to you in a story before this. And again, I wanted to stay topical with it to stay as positive as we can maintain. But I appreciated that. You don't probably know how much I appreciated that. And it did end up selling it. But it was one of those things where the way they handled it left me with an impression for the future. And I really think that if you're in rent-to-own right now, like, man, it's so competitive, Phil. If I'm just like calling it like I see it, rent to own when you got in 03 was way different than what it is now. So there's all these different tools and tricks and all this stuff to rent to own. There's dealer premiums. There's, paying for this, paying for that, trying to create some sense of loyalty. If there's no loyalty, there's RTO companies starting shed companies to create those contracts or purchasing to try and create that. Where's all that going? Where do you land on all of that?
So I'll say this about the conversation you had with Richard in regards to you being in a spot potentially vulnerable, kind of trying to raise money and do your business and not taking advantage of it. Look, we're not perfect. We've got a situation right now with a very large dealer that we struck a deal with some time ago, and it's gotten sideways, and we're fixing it, and we'll get there. But we've got some work to do to live up to our end. And so before we go cast on someone else, we have to sit and really internally and go, okay, have we been the very best we can? We absolutely make mistakes. One of the things we're really trying to work on is having, and again, it gets back to your salespeople and especially with this new leadership team, is listening to them. Sometimes a salesperson calls in and we've done something that's not in our, that is not to our core values and beliefs. And the salesperson calls in and says, hey, this dealer's got a big issue with this. Well, yeah. When you're not in on that conversation, it's easy to minimize what that salesperson's experiencing. So there's two parts. One, not to do that, and two, to make sure that salesperson knows, hey, if nothing's happened and you feel like you're being ignored, how can you ring the bell? How can you get a megaphone when you're out on the road? And so the way that works is trust, and then having them be integrated part of the organization, not, what happens in a lot of organizations, your sales staff is sort of out in the field on their own with one or 2 points of contact. So integrating them. So first of all, I'm glad to hear that story. We do really well. We make mistakes, and when we do our best to reflect internally and not blame and go, okay, how do we fix this? Is it fixable? How do we do this? Are we in a true partnership? And then if so, how can we make sure if this thing ever doesn't work, we can hold our heads up high that we tried. We make mistakes, but we do our best to fix them when we do. So that's kind of one part of that story. In terms of the relationship between dealers and rent-to-own companies or the evolution of the industry, we're all watching it evolve and figuring out what is the value of the relationship of creating the sales environment that generates customer contracts for which we buy and hold and service. What is that value in terms of the quality of the type of contract we're getting, the terms on the contract, the profitability, the sharing of that profitability? What you're doing is raising or lowering your profitability. you're either taking more risk, you do a lot of 1 month down, 60 transactions on $20,000 sheds, and you're just, it's just not becoming a very profitable because of high early termination rates and whatever. Okay, you can't share a whole lot of profitability on that. You don't have any, probably.
Yeah, there's no profit to share.
So there's a balance in there of how far and aggressive you are with those terms. There's the referral fee of, or whatever people want to call it, of sharing, in theory, revenue or profitability on contracts that dealer's generating. There's a lot of different ways to go about that, and I think our industry is trying to figure that out. The industry is trying to figure out what's that equilibrium. And there's an efficient markets theory, which, finance and business theory of if the efficient markets will eventually shake out. And we're still in a stage, especially with fragmentation on both the rental companies and on the dealer base, that figuring that out is just going to take some time. Eventually, if an RTO company is paying a referral fee that's too high, they're going to go out of business, or they're going to have to quit paying that amount because they can't stay in business and generate the yield they need to generate. If the dealer is dictating that they have to have that much money to stay in business, they probably have a faulty model. And eventually, when they aren't getting paid that, they're going to go out of business. And it'll eventually get to an equilibrium, which is usually because of consolidation. That consolidation will drive that. The power shifts back and forth right now until it gets to that equilibrium, is my belief. And my job is to look out and to go, what are the different mechanisms to test, to try, to see what's best for the dealer and us? Because it can't be just us. If it's just us, that'll last for a while, and then someone else will come along and give that dealer a better deal.
Yeah, that's sort of my concern with. I've heard it: referral fees, dealer premiums, kickbacks, whatever you want to call it, contract bonus, probably 10 other things. It's my argument has been, and I love having these conversations. I wish sometimes people could be a fly on the wall, because sometimes we have these conversations even off the air, and not just with you, with multiple people in the industry. I would love to. The best podcasts never have a microphone. Trust me.
Right.
Like the best ones never get recorded.
Right.
As good as they can be, I always think that there's just a real conversation that happens, and I wish I could capture it in real time. But I've made the argument a couple of times, is it a race to the bottom? I ask more questions rather than pose more. That sounds terrible, doesn't it? I pose the problem without a solution. Here's what I think's the problem. How do you solve it? I don't know. I'm just telling you what's wrong.
I'm telling you what's not working. Well, no, but I think it's raising a conversation.
Yeah.
Instead of posing, to me, it's raising a dialogue to make people aware of kind of how is this working, and to have that conversation, which is one of the things that again, that comes back to that service orientation. How do we have dialogues with those dealers that's factual, that has data behind it, that has visibility for them? That's one. We're in a huge process right now to begin sharing more and more data with our dealers through dashboards and Power BI, so that they can see what's going on. So more
education, more knowledge,
absolutely,
creates more communication.
Absolutely, because they're a little understandably.
Yeah.
You're telling me this, Phil, and I trust you. I know you. I've known you for 20 years. I've known you for 10 years. Whatever.
Trust but verify. Ronald Reagan said, right?
Yeah,
Trust
but boy, verify. If I begin to start kind of questioning that, wouldn't it be great if you could see your data real time?
Yeah.
And if I'm telling you the truth, why do I not want you to see it?
Absolutely.
Right? So we've had all this data. I mean, we have from 20 years ago our first rental contract. We have all the data on that first contract 20 years ago in our system. We have an unbelievable amount of information. We have 5 people in nothing but analytics. We have our dev team is of, at this point, maybe 10 people that are developers, software engineers. We have, again, I think 4 or 5 analytics that prepare data, analyze data. Now they're helping us get that prepared and to share with dealers. And then there's an education. What does this mean? And not the pretty stuff that we used to do. So here's when people are coming into your lot. Dealers look at that and go, that's great for a while, but now what do you want me to do with that?
There's so many sales approaches that I've seen that say, here's the analytics. And when the room clears out, the conversations I hear is, what does that mean?
100%. So there has to be an education, right? And then it has to be actionable.
Yeah.
So you gave me all that stuff. That's really nice to know. But what in the world can
What's
I
it mean?
do?
How does it help?
How can I grow my business? How can I expand my margins?
Yeah.
How can I provide a better service to my customers? Yeah. How can I provide a better partnership? If I'm wanting a referral fee, well, wait a minute, you have this dealer, one of your top 3 dealers has a retrieval rate that's unbelievable. Well, every one of their contracts is a 60-month contract. It's a giant retrieval rate. What's going on with that one location, right? So a lot of times the owner of the business has got 10, 20, 30, 40 locations. They don't have the systems right now to pinpoint that. So let's provide that data. When we do that, the engagement with them is tremendous. They're like, oh, I didn't know that. Well, what's happening up there? Well, yeah, that's, now that's their job. It's not our job to make a judgment. It's not our job to tell them what to do. It's our job to provide the information and to explain the information and explain how it affects us. Now, we can either live with it or not live with it if it's a huge effect, but our job's absolutely not to tell them how to run their business.
Yeah.
In no way, shape, or form. I've watched, I haven't seen this in a long time. I was sitting in a room with a dealer. I'll never forget it. It was in North Carolina. I could tell you the town, but I won't, although I don't think that dealer's there anymore. And I was in there calling on that dealer. The owner was in there, and we were talking. A competitor of ours walks in, does not know who I am, it's 10 years ago, and starts talking to the dealer. And the dealer doesn't introduce me by name. I just kind of sitting there. I think the dealer's kind of ready for me to get the heck out of there anyway. So I'm just listening.
I wish I had like a little John Wayne.
No, I'm just kind of like, okay, I'm kind of curious.
Yeah, sure.
I watched the rent-on guy start to, in my opinion, basically lecture the dealer of all the things wrong with his lot and all the things that he needs to fix and do. Now, everything he said was right.
But it's way more welcome when they ask.
Well, it's not his lot. If the guy doesn't want to cut his grass, that's up to him.
Yeah.
Like, if you ask me, you think I should cut my grass? I think you probably should cut your grass. But if you don't ask me, it is your business. I am not there to tell you how to run your business. If you want advice and you ask for it, I'm happy to do everything I can to help. The guy walks out of the room. I was dumbfounded. And I'll never forget thinking, if I can't beat this, I am terrible. Like, holy cow. Like, I would have never in a million years thought to walk in and talk to a dealer like that.
Yeah.
So I think from us, what the culture that we have to make sure we remember is, even though we have a lot of this information and we have a lot of this data and we have a lot of size, we have to be very careful in making sure it doesn't seem that we're dictating. And when you get excited about things like I do and our sales team does, we get excited about this information and how we can help, you can quickly, because maybe they don't understand it, you haven't taken the time to explain it, all of a sudden you can sound like you're trying to preach. You can sound like you're trying to dictate. You can sound like you're trying to direct. And that's not our job. That's not what a partner does. It's not what I walk in and tell my wife how to do something. You walk in and talk, and you have a conversation, and you help.
I'm self-reflecting on my own business here. I'm self-reflecting not just on my marriage, but self-reflecting on my business and how it's important to ask the right questions, not to tell people what to do. Definitely don't want to tell them what to say or, I've seen this before and you should. I'm trying to be a mediator of information, trying to be a mediator of communication, right?
When you get excited, that's hard. When you get really excited and passionate about something and you're passionate.
Yes. And you feel like you know the answer, or you feel like you've been there, you've seen that, so you feel like you've got something that you want to add. So your intentions are to help, but it comes across as
100%.
Anything other than
100. And it's something that you do every day.
Yeah.
So you're more knowledgeable than that person. Now, that puts them on the defensive automatically.
Absolutely.
And so you have to be really careful. I forget that. I slip up sometimes.
I learned that in sales.
But it's tough. You're right. So I've said I'm not the greatest salesperson in the world.
I've said it myself. I said whenever I was in sales, I actually wasn't the best at it.
Right.
Because I was very relationship driven, I could not put down the relationship whenever it came to just the sale. Like if they asked me a question like, what do you think this is, the best thing? I'm like, well, let's look at your budget. And actually I don't. I think you should go here. This is my opinion. But it's like, you're going to buy what you want. So, but I'd have people say, man, are you trying to talk them out of buying a building? I'm like, no, I'm trying to give them good information. So, I think a lot of times the consumer does not, we have consumer protection for a reason. So I think 100%. That it's very important, like I think it's very important how I treat my fellow man whenever I make so much money that I can give back. I think whenever I have some knowledge that I can expound on and give that knowledge freely to someone, because I learned it the hard way maybe, but I learned it. So I feel an obligation. And sometimes that obligation doesn't look like a sale. The obligation is the communication and educating them on. And I really think, even though we say that's not the best sales approach, I think for the people who understand it, get it, and appreciate it, they come back.
Well, whoever they say it's not the best sales approach are wrong.
Yeah.
100%.
It's Matthew Dixon called the Challenger Sale Book.
He's wrong. He's wrong. He is wrong.
Yeah.
And this is why I say that. Now, if I'm selling you something you're never going to buy again, and you're probably never going to refer anyone to buy, that's a different sale.
Thank you for listening to part 1 of my interview with Phil Falls, founder and CEO of RTO National. Stay tuned tomorrow for part 2.